The 1970s gave us some of the greatest music ever recorded. But for every Fleetwood Mac or Elton John who became immortal, there were dozens of songs that ruled the radio, dominated the charts, and then quietly vanished. Not because they weren't good, but because time has a way of burying things without permission. Some of these were massive hits, #1 hits even. These are 15 hits from the 70s that were a massive success, but nobody remembers today. Number 15, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, by Looking Glass. In the summer of 1972, a New Jersey band called Looking Glass hit the very top of the Billboard Hot 100 with Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. It stayed at #1 for a week. At the time, it was one of the biggest singles of the year, finishing among the top 15 best-selling songs of 1972 overall. The song tells the story of a barmaid named Brandy, who falls for a sailor who ultimately loves the sea more than he could ever love her. It's a warmly constructed little story, a perfect melody, relaxed harmonies, and the kind of arrangement that just felt like summer. The band, Elliot Lurie, Larry Gonski, Peter Sweevil, and Jeff Grob, had a genuine chemistry that came through on record. Lead singer Elliot Lurie wrote the song, which is one of those rare cases where the writing, the arrangement, and the performance all hit the same note at the same time. But after Brandy, Looking Glass essentially disappeared. Their follow-up singles barely dented the charts. By 1974, the band had broken up. The song has resurfaced occasionally in film and television soundtracks over the years, but most people under 60 couldn't name the band if you paid them. Number 14, Wildfire, by Michael Martin Murphey. This one genuinely surprises people when they hear it climbed all the way to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the spring of 1975. Wildfire, by Michael Martin Murphey, is a haunting, atmospheric ballad about a girl who went out in a blizzard looking for her horse and never came back. And now, her ghost rides the prairies at night. Murphy had been part of the Texas singer-songwriter scene through the early 1970s and had some regional success before Wildfire crossed over to national radio. It was pulled from his album Blue Sky, Night Thunder, and produced by legendary Nashville producer Bob Johnston, who had previously worked with Bob Dylan, Simon and Garfunkel, and Johnny Cash. The album was a commercial breakthrough for Murphy, but nothing from it approached what Wildfire did on the charts. The song had an unusual sound for a top 5 hit, slow, melancholy, almost cinematic. There's no obvious hook in the conventional pop sense. It just unfolds, and somehow that was enough for millions of people. Murphy went on to have a long career in country and Western music, but Wildfire remains his commercial peak. Mention it to someone who was in their 20s in 1975, and there's a decent chance their eyes will go somewhere else entirely for a moment. Number 13, Midnight at the Oasis, by Maria Muldaur. Maria Muldaur had spent years working in folk and jug band circles in New York City before she released her solo debut in 1973. Midnight at the Oasis, released in early 1974, climbed to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned Muldaur a Grammy nomination for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. The song has a wonderful desert jazz feeling, languorous, unhurried, completely its own thing. The guitar work by Amos Garrett became one of the most celebrated solos of the decade. There's a reason music journalists spent years trying to understand exactly what Garrett did on that track, because it sounds like nothing else from that era. The production, handled by Joe Boyd, gave the song a warmth and space that was unusual for pop radio of the period.
You don't have to answer.
Muldaur never returned to the top 10 in the United States, though she continued recording for decades across blues, jazz, and gospel. Midnight at the Oasis remains a genuine artifact of a very specific moment in early 70s California music, laid back, sophisticated, and completely distinctive. Most people have simply forgotten it existed.
Come on, till the evening ends, till the evening.
Number 12. Afternoon Delight by Starland Vocal Band.
Afternoon delight.
Not every forgotten hit was forgotten because it was subtle. Afternoon Delight by the Starland Vocal Band hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in July 1976 and stayed there for 2 weeks. It also won the Grammy for Best New Artist that year. At the time, it was inescapable on AM radio.
Thinking of you's working up my appetite, looking forward to a little.
Bill and Taffy Danoff formed the core of the group. Bill Danoff had previously co-written Take Me Home Country Roads with John Denver. The band's 4-part harmony and clean production gave Afternoon Delight a wholesome surface that made its actual subject matter land very cheerfully on daytime radio. It was a song the whole family could theoretically sing along to without anyone in the room saying anything about it. The song has had a complicated second life as a punchline, largely due to its use in Anchorman and Arrested Development, both of which leaned into the gap between the song's sound and its meaning. But the harmony is genuinely impressive, and it was a serious chart contender in a year full of them. The Starland Vocal Band never charted again in the top 40 after their debut single. That's a remarkable thing to say about a Grammy-winning number 1 act. Number 11. Shannon by Henry Gross. Here is a song that absolutely surprises people when they learn what it's about. Shannon by Henry Gross reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1976. A lovely piano-driven acoustic ballad with a genuinely emotional vocal. Most listeners assumed it was about a woman. It was about a dog. Henry Gross had been a member of Sha Na Na in the early 1970s before going solo. Shannon was inspired by the death of Beach Boy Carl Wilson's Irish setter, also named Shannon. Gross had his own Irish setter, felt the connection deeply, and wrote the song. The result was one of the more affecting pieces of music on the 1976 charts, genuinely emotional without being overwrought, which is a harder thing to pull off than it sounds. The song became the subject of Casey Kasem's now famous on-air outburst, in which the radio host was furious at being asked to transition from an upbeat dedication into a song about a dying dog. The audio recording of Kasem's profanity-filled meltdown circulated widely decades later, bringing a strange kind of renewed attention to the song and to the awkward editorial decisions that defined Top 40 radio. Gross never had another Top 40 single, but there's a good chance that if you heard Shannon right now, the melody would come back before the second verse was over. Number 10. Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks.
Goodbye to you, my trusted friend.
Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks was one of the biggest singles of 1974, spending 3 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and becoming one of the best-selling singles of the entire year. It was also, without much competition, one of the most melancholy number 1 hits in the history of American pop music. The song is an English-language adaptation of Le Moribond, a chanson by Belgian poet-singer Jacques Brel, with English lyrics by American poet Rod McEwen. It's a song sung by a dying man saying goodbye to the people in his life.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
Terry Jacks was a Canadian musician who had previously been part of a duo called the Poppy Family. He recorded Seasons in the Sun after learning the Beach Boys had been considering a version, finished it himself, and released it. The public responded in enormous numbers. It became the second best-selling single of 1974 overall. Today, the song occupies a strange place in cultural memory. People who were young in 1974 tend to remember it immediately, and then look slightly embarrassed. It somehow achieved massive mainstream success by being genuinely, uncomplicatedly sad. There's a lesson somewhere in that, about what audiences actually want versus what radio programmers think they want. Jack's never had another US Top 40 hit.
We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun.
Number 9. Feelings by Morris Albert.
Feelings for
Mention feelings in certain company, and you'll hear a soft groan, which is interesting, because the song peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1975 and spent months on the charts across multiple countries. Morris Albert was a Brazilian singer whose real name is Mauricio Alberto Kaiserman. He wrote Feelings when he was just 20 years old, and the ballad became an international phenomenon. It was covered by over 500 different artists in the years after its release, including Nina Simone, Julio Iglesias, and Roger Whittaker, which is a remarkable figure for any song from any era. The string-heavy arrangement and Albert's earnest vocal are entirely sincere, in a way that pop music spent the following decade learning to avoid. That sincerity is probably why it got the reputation it eventually got, but also why it connected so deeply in the first place. Albert never had another significant US chart hit, but Feelings became one of the defining and gently mocked songs of the decade. It still carries that particular warm, nostalgic awkwardness that belongs specifically to the mid-1970s.
feelings for
Number 8. Chevy Van by Sammy Johns.
Don't run me in my Chevy van, that's alright.
Chevy Van by Sammy Johns reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the spring of 1975. Sammy Johns was a North Carolina-born songwriter and performer who had spent years working the club circuit before this track caught fire on AM radio. The song has a loose, easygoing groove, warm acoustic guitar, a conversational vocal, the kind of unforced feeling that was the hallmark of a lot of Southern soft rock from that period. Van culture was completely real in 1975. Custom vans with shag carpet, porthole windows, and hand-painted murals on the side were genuinely aspirational consumer items. People drove them on dates. There were van clubs. Johns had a few other minor charting singles, but never broke back into the top 10. Chevy Van has resurfaced occasionally in advertising and on nostalgia playlists over the years, but it remains comfortably obscure for anyone born after about 1975. It sold over 1 million copies in its time, which makes the silence around it now somewhat striking. Number 7. Hocus Pocus by Focus. This one is genuinely unexpected on a list of forgotten hits, because Hocus Pocus by the Dutch progressive rock band Focus is arguably one of the most technically impressive singles to ever crack the American top 10. The track, re-released in 1973, reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. The track features guitarist Jan Akkerman and vocalist/flautist Thijs van Leer, who alternates between classical flute playing, hard rock, and, this part is not an exaggeration, committed, aggressive, operatic yodeling. It changes time signature multiple times. It is a genuinely singular piece of music. There is nothing else quite like it in the entire Billboard archive. It was a top 10 hit, in America, with yodeling. Focus continued recording and touring, but never approached that level of American chart success again. The song occasionally appears in films and television when a director wants to signal that something strange and slightly unhinged is happening, which is entirely appropriate. Jan Akkerman is widely considered one of the finest rock guitarists of the 1970s, but he and his bandmates remain largely unknown to American audiences outside of this one remarkable single. Number 6. Vehicle by the Ides of March. Before Jim Peterick co-founded Survivor, the band that gave the world Eye of the Tiger in 1982, He was the lead vocalist and guitarist for a Chicago horn rock group called the Ides of March. In 1970, Vehicle became one of the fastest-selling singles in the history of Warner Brothers Records. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song is built on a brass-heavy riff, a shouted vocal, and enough energy to power a small city. It sounds like what would happen if a garage rock band hired a full horn section and nobody told them to moderate anything. Peteric's vocal delivery is completely committed from the first note to the last. It was the kind of song that landed hard on AM radio because it demanded your attention the moment it started. The Ides of March had a few other charting singles, but nothing approaching Vehicle. Peterick eventually went on to co-write and perform with Survivor, leaving Vehicle as a vivid snapshot of what early 70s rock radio sounded like when it was at its most unself-conscious and confident. Number 5. Spiders and Snakes by Jim Stafford.
I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it...
Jim Stafford had a very specific lane in 1974, and he wrote it beautifully. Spiders and Snakes peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1974. A funny, good-natured song about a boy trying to impress a girl with things that horrify her. It sold over 1 million copies and made Stafford a recognizable name that year.
I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it...
Stafford had a genuine ear for comic songwriting. And the track works because it has a real melodic foundation. It isn't a gimmick dressed as a song, it's a song that happens to be funny. The production by Steve Bowery gave it a bounce and warmth that made it feel effortless. He also hosted his own television variety show, The Jim Stafford Show, briefly in 1975, which gave him more visibility than most one-hit wonders ever managed. His follow-up singles charted modestly, but never returned him to the top 5. He spent subsequent decades as a popular live performer, particularly in Branson, Missouri, where he ran his own theater for many years. Spiders and Snakes was the moment everything lined up for him, and it lined up very well.
I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it...
Number 4. Ring My Bell by Anita Ward. Disco produced an enormous volume of music in the late 1970s, and much of it has receded into the background of memory. Ring My Bell by Anita Ward is one of the ones that deserve to last longer in the cultural conversation. Released in 1979, it reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 1 week and became one of the defining singles of disco's final year. Ward was a school teacher in Memphis when she recorded the song, which was written and produced by Frederick Knight. The production is tight and clean, the vocal is controlled and confident, and the chorus hook is as strong as anything else that charted in 1979. The synthesizer line that opens the track is one of those immediately recognizable sounds from that era, at least recognizable to anyone who was paying attention at the time. Ward herself never had another US Top 40 hit. For many people who were young in 1979, hearing those opening bars is like being transported directly back to that summer. For most people born after it, the song draws a complete blank. Number 3. Mr. Big Stuff by Jean Knight. Jean Knight released Mr. Big Stuff in 1971, and it became one of the defining soul singles of the year, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and spending 13 weeks on the chart. It was recorded at the Stax Record Studio in Memphis, produced by Wardell Quizerg, and delivered with a vocal that is confident, warm, and entirely certain of itself. The song's rhythm section has the loose, organic quality that characterized Stax recordings at their best. It sounds like people in a room playing together, because that's exactly what it was. There's nothing processed or overworked about it. Quizerg, who was also known as the Creole Chief of New Orleans production, gave the track a rhythm and groove that felt completely natural. Knight had other singles on the R&B charts through the 1970s, but, Mr. Big Stuff towered over all of them. The song was sampled by Heavy D and the Boys in 1989, giving it a second life with a younger audience. But Knight herself remained largely outside the mainstream spotlight after her initial peak. The original record is one of the sharpest soul performances of the entire decade. Number 2. I Love the Nightlife by Alicia Bridges. At the tail end of the 1970s, as disco was making its last serious run before the cultural backlash arrived, Alicia Bridges released I Love the Nightlife in 1978. It peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the most enduring dance floor recordings of the era. Bridges was from North Carolina and had been recording for years before this song connected with a national audience. She wrote the song herself, which was not especially common for solo disco performers of the period, and the production captures the energy of a live dance floor in a way that a lot of studio disco never quite managed. There's a directness to the record that still holds up decades later. The song has had a genuinely long shelf life in clubs around the world, which is a different kind of cultural persistence than most forgotten hits achieve. But Bridges never had another US Top 40 single. She gave everything to that one moment, and in its own way, that one moment has kept going without her, which is either inspiring or bittersweet depending on how you look at it. Number 1. In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry.
In the summertime, when the weather is high, you can stretch right up.
We'll close with one that represents something the decade was just beginning to figure out in 1970. That the warmest, most carefree feeling in pop music could be captured in a single track if everything lined up right. In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry was an enormous hit in the United Kingdom, reaching number 1 and eventually selling over 6 million copies worldwide. In the United States, it reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of 1970. It remains one of the best-selling singles in British chart history. Ray Dorset, who wrote the song and led the group, built it on a jug band rhythm, a skiffle-influenced, loose, acoustic groove that sounded unlike anything else on pop radio at the time. There are no drums in the conventional sense. There's a washboard. And yet it became a massive international hit. Mungo Jerry continued in various forms in the United Kingdom, but never returned to those commercial heights in America. In the Summertime has appeared in films, commercials, and compilations consistently for over 50 years. But ask most people under 50 who Mungo Jerry is, and you'll get a blank look. Ask someone who was young in 1970, and they'll probably start humming before you even finish the question.
In the summertime, when the weather is high, you can stretch right up.
The 1970s were richer than most people give them credit for. These 15 songs all had their moment. Some of them had enormous moments. Number 1 hits, Grammy Awards, millions of copies sold. And then time moved on and took them with it. That's how it works, and it has always worked that way. But they existed. They were real. And for anyone who was young during that decade, driving around with the radio on, hearing these songs come out of the speaker without knowing what they were yet, that's not nothing. That's the whole thing. If any of these stirred something up while you were watching, that was the whole point. If you found a song you hadn't thought about in 40 years, even better. Please give this a like if you enjoyed it. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who love this kind of music. And if you want to keep finding songs and stories from the decades that shaped everything after them, hit subscribe. New content goes up regularly, and there are a lot more forgotten gems where these came from.